Anaglyph jukebox?
Flash Gordon was featured in 3 serial films starring Buster Crabbe, a former Olympic swimmer, I believe, like a certain Tarzan. Flash Gordon, 1936. Flash Gordon's Trip to Mars, 1938, and Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe, 1940. Well, what else is there to do after you conquer the universe? Finally, George Lucas has often said that Flash Gordon was a major influence on his Star Wars influence. In fact, Flash Gordon serials and the comic strip it was based on were the template for many, many future sci-fi films, and that was all created here. And I think I am going to share with you the next jukebox.
There's the turret house where we're to meet Prince Baron.
Come on, we'd better hurry up. Must be Baron's ship. Why should Prince Baron do that?
I don't know. I can't understand.
He's circling to come back. Quick, get under cover. Is there any way out of this place?
Yes, the trap door.
That finishes Flash Gordon and his friends. You murder. Put him in the dungeon.
Thanks, man. Okay, now this week's guest, Boris Starosta, will discuss later on. He's going to discuss these monographs, but right now we're going to look at his work. And let's see. Hiya, Boris. Welcome to New York virtually. We're going to have to turn your mic on. Could we? Are you able to speak?
Hi, Johnny.
There you go, man. You look great.
I'm here. Thank you.
Skin tone good. You look good. You're good. You're good. You're like an artist, and we all love that.
And thank you in advance. I'll start right off and I'll say thank you for inviting me onto this show. And I've never seen this show, and I'm just amazed at the production.
Yeah, we juggle bowling balls here in our spare time. Well, thank you. And other people are going to say the same thing, but I may as well say it on their behalf. From the first, I've been a fan of your works since I was first exposed to it, and from the first image I saw, and obviously I'm not alone in that. Just incredible work. Now, before we begin, I just want to ask one question. What are you doing now? You see, I do a lot of things because I have I'm a composer, musician too, but I like to eat regular. It's one of them things, So what do you do other than phenomenal art?
Well, even before I started with 3D, I was a technical illustrator, and I've been doing that since the late 1980s. So a good long time now. I'm dating myself, and I still do that. I still have clients from all over the world who who want me to draw up some experimental apparatus or something for their journal article or for their presentation that they're going to take to a conference or whatever. So I work with academic scientists, research scientists.
Wow, that's extreme. I thought I did cool stuff. You're a great challenge.
It can get like any job. It probably looks great on the outside, but it's pretty mundane when you get into it.
But it's wonderful exercise for your mind, because when they're giving you these things to, all of a sudden you kind of are seeing the inside of something complicated. Yeah, that's phenomenal. Anyway, we'll get on to your work right now. Oh, so explain this. This is gorgeous.
So this is one of my earliest stereoscopic images.
I'm going to make a quick adjustment. Hold on.
Yeah.
Good. Got it. Please.
It's funny. I didn't get into 3D photography. As a photographer, I was, a computer artist in the 90s. And I got this really cool 3D modeling software called Bryce, KPT Bryce. And it was actually not even that strong a modeler, because all it gave you was cubes and spheres and cylinders and cones and shapes like that to work with. And you could stretch them and intersect them and do stuff like that. But if you look at this graphic, for example, here, it mainly just consists of spheres and cylinders and cubes that have been stretched this way and that. And I started playing around with it, and I had through my other scientific, I guess, illustration work, I had some theoretical knowledge of stereoscopic display, say on the same level that Brewster had. He kind of had an intuitive understanding that two viewpoints would give you a 3D view. And I didn't know anything about 3D photography. So what I did was I wanted to try that with these 3D models. And in those days, the way to get a high resolution output was to send your digital file to a lab where they would print a slide for you. And I had that done with these two viewpoints. And then I went out and my first expense getting into 3D was buying a second loop, because I did have a loop and a light table from shooting slides, just regular slides. And I juggled my two slides onto the light table and fiddled around with the loops, and I was totally blown away. And this is how I got ensnared into this hobby of stereoscopic imaging. And this is one of my first images, one of the early images that I made. I think I made this in 1996.
What year is this? 96, you said?
96, yeah. And
so basically, you took the two loops. So you laid a slide and a loop over each one, and that's how you did it?
Yeah, and then I had, you had to kind of adjust the positions and everything, to get the alignments to come out right. But yeah, that's how I got started. And I started posting these things on my webpage at the time, and the web was still very young in the late 90s. And I started researching, everything about stereoscopic. Well, actually, no, first I posted the stuff on my webpage, and then I started getting emails from people saying, do you know anything about stereophotography, or are you a stereophotographer? I'd never heard of it. And that's got me into it, and then I started researching it and looking into it and trying it out and so on. That's
you know what you captured here? You captured what my 8-year-old self, who went to the World's Fair in New York, who was like addicted to the World's Fair. You kind of created the world I expected it to be by now. I expected this to actually be real. So I'm really fond of this. I'll be honest with you. I wish I lived in that building.
Yeah, futurism and skyscrapers are sort of a thing that I really like. This image reflects that.
Thank you. So we'll head to the next one.
Yeah, sure.
Now explain Pixie.
So a little further along in my exploration, I wanted to continue working with the 3D, modeling, and I'm always interested in the challenge. And I had started photographing the nude, and I thought, well, I would like to incorporate a nude into one of my 3D scenes, a fantasy scene. And I kind of came up with this idea of a pixie, a nymph or a pixie or something, having alighted on a pond. And the challenge here, of course, was getting the geometry of the 3D photo to match the geometry of the 3D scene. So I actually set up the 3D scene first with, the water and the ground underneath and all that, the plant stuff. And then looking at that scene, I worked backwards from that to decide how far away am I going to be from the model? What's the stereo base going to be, and so on. So it was like an interactive work like that.
Yeah, because the next one we'll break this out.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of
Go
technical,
ahead.
but I want to sit on this a minute. So the underwater stuff, you began with the underwater.
Well, I began with, I wanted to have, even at this point early on, I realized the real charm in 3D imaging, stereoscopic imaging, is number one, reflections, and number two, transparency. So I wanted to incorporate all those things into my image, and also structural complexity, like all these little leaves in the foreground. You know, there's a structure there, three-dimensional structure. And so that's why I made the scene with liquid and reflections and something underneath the liquid, which is that sort of pebbly sand underneath there. That's all computer generated. Everything in here is computer generated.
That was I was going to get to that. Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
except for the figure. And the figure I shot in a dark room, so I could easily isolate her from the background. And then pasting this figure into the 3D model was a project in and of itself, and that's just described in the next slide that you're going to show, I think, if you're done with this slide.
Now, I just want to hold 1 second. So
Yeah.
now, one quick question is, are you still in contact with the model?
No.
And how long did that take to shoot?
Well, I had shot one session with her before getting into this particular project. And then I brought her in for shooting this image, and that took maybe an hour or so. Just spent an hour shooting a couple of different poses, and all shot at this sort of.
Now, how far were you along with this, with the other material, the other images in the? How far were you along before you made
I think I was pretty far along with the whole scene, and I just wanted to get the figure put into the scene.
So you knew direction. You could direct her because you already had the scene.
Yeah, I directed this pose, expecting wings to be put on, and I also set the distance of the camera pretty far back. You know, I was maybe 20, 30 feet back, because I didn't want it to have too strong of a stereoscopic effect. And that was actually contrary to the way I was shooting early on. Early on, I was shooting stuff really close up, and of course, that's every novice's mistake. So a lot of my early 3D images, when I tried to show them at the convention in Richmond, the 3D was so big, like the horizontal disparities on the screen were like 3 feet or something. It was ridiculous, and I had to converge the projectors to basically bring the image out in front of the screen very significantly, just so that people could fuse the image. Maybe that was actually a really cool thing, because then my figures would have been floating over the heads of the audience. I didn't experience that myself, really, but
it's great. Now, happy accident. You'll love that.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I want to make sure that stays right. Did the model ever see this?
Yes, I think I did. I mean, I stayed in touch with her for a while afterwards, and she definitely saw it. I probably gave her a copy. Yeah.
Is she a regular subject?
No, I only shot her twice.
Shot her twice.
Yeah.
And how long ago was this?
This was 1998.
98.
Yeah.
She's a grandmother, a grand pixel.
Who knows?
She's a grand pixie by now. No, that's you know.
Well, she's younger than I am, and I'm not yet a granddad.
Okay. She cut me off at the pass. But you know, this image, and personally, this would be like one of the 5 best images, as far as I'm concerned, that I've ever seen in 3D. Now, people may have a different opinion, but that's okay. I'm running the show. But there's something about it that is so engaging. How close to what the image in your mind did this come?
To be honest, I can't tell you. I don't remember. I mean, I had wanted to produce an image like this, and I was pretty happy with it when it came together. There was a little tweaking here and there that I did. I actually did a little bit of stereo conversion work, believe it or not, in the form of shifting the wings. As you'll see when we go to the next slide, the wings could not be in front of the photographic image to get this rendered correctly. So when the render was actually done, finally, the wings appeared to be about 3 or 4 feet behind her back. Anyway, hovering over her butt or something. And so I had to shift them over. I did that. I think I did that using Photoshop. I can't even remember. I had to play around with it a little bit that way, just to get the 3D to work out exactly right. And I was in the end pretty happy with the image. But I also at that same time was working on a bunch of other images. So this shows you from a different viewpoint the very same scene that was being rendered. So if you look at the bottom half, part B, you see I've done another stereoscopic rendering, and this time I was showing you how I actually inserted the photograph of her into the 3D scene as an object in the 3D scene. So it's like, you know how you get these cardboard cutout, life-size cardboard cutouts of famous actors or whatever, and you stick them in your room. That's kind of what I was doing here in this 3D, simulated 3D space in the computer. And the reason I needed to do it that way is because I wanted her reflection to look correct. And I also wanted to make sure that you could see her feet below the surface of the water, all of which worked out as I intended. But for that, I actually had to have the photo inside this 3D scene, and the photo had to be re-rendered through this ray tracing process. So she's not just pasted in; she's actually her photo is actually a stereoscopic component. And so when I rendered the left side, the left camera viewpoint, I put the left photo into that panel, which on the top you can see there's sort of a rectangular panel marked pixie. So that was the left eye photo was placed in there for the left eye render, and then I swapped it out for the right eye photo for the right eye render, and that's how she turns out to be stereoscopic. But you can also see from that panel pixie, I had to have the wings behind the panel in order for the render to work out. And that's what ended up in the final render, stereoscopic rendering, to put the wings too far back, too far behind her. And so then I had to move them forward by using some basically 3D conversion techniques, just shifting pixels over.
Now, A is...
So in A, you can see where the cameras are located to produce the render, the two renderings. And you can see the various components of the digital components, the lily pads. Now I added these labels, afterwards, after I made this. This, I should say, the top part is exactly the same as the bottom. Part A is the same as part B, but part A is a screen grab of the way I see the rendering before I actually execute it. So what I'm seeing is wireframe representations of all these things that I put into the scene, the lily pads and the blades of grass and so on.
Now, your experience in graphics design allowed you to the upper portion here. That is because that's how did that diagram show up? Where did that come from? It's a screen grab of a diagram.
It's a screen grab of the scene, but from a different viewpoint. So where I can actually see the cameras where they're located for doing the rendering of the final image.
Yeah, and what program were you using for this?
I was using something called Kai Power Tools Bryce, KPT
Wow.
Bryce. Now, those of you who are very old with computer graphics will recognize that software, and unfortunately, it's long gone.
Yeah.
Although I can still run it though because I keep my old computers.
Yeah, I have a collection here too. I've got just for that reason. It's ridiculous.
And I still actually sometimes, on rare occasion, use it for my work. But for that, I have to have these old computers. Anyway,
This looks like a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of preparatory work, a lot of design work, putting this image together.
Well, especially for that time, because this was not easy. This was.
Oh yeah, at the time it was fairly advanced, I guess, in terms of ray tracing. Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the picture one more time so we can all appreciate how it got to that.
Yeah, you can actually see her feet. If you look very carefully, you can see her feet down there below the reflection of her shin, I guess.
Oh, wow.
And you can see that the feet are correctly, well, you wouldn't know this, but I can see that they're correctly sort of foreshortened because of the index of refraction in water. Mm-hmm. And of course, above that, in front of that is her reflection, which then moves down behind the lily pad and so on. And the reflection is appropriately distorted by the waves, all of which is, ray tracing simulation of waves. So
everything there has really there's a big decision on everything in there, right?
Yeah, I was shifting things around to get them to interact certain ways. Yeah, the positions of all the plants.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that. The building plans.
It's a very intentional composition. Yes.
Yeah, that was a really deep dive. Thank you very much.
No, that was excellent. Snapshot.
Incredible.
Right.
Now we'll move on.
Right. So this was shot quite a bit more recently, although still, I think maybe 10 or so years ago. I was visiting someone to the west of me, north of Harrisonburg, Virginia, and they lived in an old farmhouse, and we hired a model to do some photography. But I loved the farmhouse actually more than the model. But anyway, I got this photograph because I love this old house, and I love stairs. Someday I'm going to do a slideshow that's just stairs, because I have
brilliant.
so many images of stairs. It's unbelievable. And I got to combine three of my interests here: the nude, the stairs, and sort of this old textured, weathered house. And I thought that was kind of one of my favorite images. I just wanted to show it. This was shot on a Sputnik, by the way, a medium format film.
A Sputnik, no less. Oh,
Yes.
man.
Yeah,
I guess that was my next question, actually. Oh, so you had film. Okay, so you had to go back, and it was all film, right?
a lot of the pictures I'll show today were shot on Sputnik, but I'll tell you how how they were shot if I can remember. But this one I remember was a Sput shot.
Oh,
Yes.
the Kodachrome? Or
No, probably Fuji Astia.
okay,
Fuji
Fuji
Astia,
stuff,
which
gotcha.
I don't think you can't get that anymore. But medium slide film is coming back, and you can now get Fuji films that are of current manufacture. You can get Provia again, I think.
Yeah, stuff
anyway.
is, but yeah. Now, okay, yeah, I'll keep moving.
Yeah. So this was segueing now towards my interest in architecture. I love architectural shapes and forms and spaces and volumes. And this was, I found this place. This is an old vinegar factory where I'd actually gone. It was in Stanton, I think, Stanton, Virginia, or maybe Waynesboro. I can't remember. Waynesboro. I was actually shopping for some building supplies, and they had a sort of this large sprawling campus of stuff that you could buy. And I saw a little bit off to the side of the property, this big old structure, which was this old vinegar factory space. And I asked if I could go in there, and they said, sure, go ahead. And I checked it out real quick, and I said, this place would be awesome to take pictures. So then I came back with the camera like a week later. And this was also shot medium format. This was shot, I think, I was borrowing a Hasselblad 500 cm motorized Hasselblad. Shot that. Hey, you skipped a slide forwards. I'm not done with that one yet. And,
Okay, yeah, I'll stick with this one. Sorry, man.
And
the vinegar got me. The smell of the vinegar.
And so what I love about this place, this particular view that I discovered, is all the little rhythmic structures. The angles, the stair steps in the back there, all the slats, the siding slats, and even up on the roof, there's corrugated steel roofing. Anyway, that's what this is all about.
And there was no flash or anything on this, right?
No, it's just natural light. Yeah, it's probably a 30-second exposure at f22 or something. Yeah.
Oh, do you have a tripod with you?
Oh my God, yeah. So the twin Hasselblad without the tripod weighed about 20-30 pounds. And then, then I had this massive tripod too. So yeah, it was a big rig.
See, that's why the Hasselblad went to the moon. There it was working.
But the funny thing is, I could have gotten a shot that's just as good with the Sputnik, and it would have been a lot lighter weight.
Shall I advance?
Yeah, now we can go ahead.
I'll get the itchy finger. Oh, there we go.
So there was a building being constructed downtown in Charlottesville, and of course I immediately got excited about that, because especially when they're building a structure like this, where first they put up columns, steel beams and columns, and then they put in flooring. And this was also shot with that big Hasselblad.
Okay.
Actually, it's shot from the roof of a neighboring building, which was, you have to get permission to get it. It's always a challenge. Teetering on the edge of this roof getting this shot, but anyway, it was fun. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, maybe I'm confused. So the Hasselblad, two Hasselblad? I mean, obviously two Hasselblads?
Yeah, because it's a synchronized photo. You can see.
Woo, baby, that's heavy. That's a load.
Yeah.
Because I guess you can get really. How about the lenses? Hasselblad lenses, or
just whatever they come with.
Whatever they come with. I like how you think. You got a Hasselblad, I got a fancy camera. Whatever with the lens.
80mm lenses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is another one of my studies in rhythm and angles and spaces and volumes. Yeah, I just like these kind of structures.
Yeah, because it's great. I love the geometric ones like this. There's so many angular things there that kind of give you depth. And so what? That was a lot of work. What drove you to take this shot?
Well, I just like construction in general. I like architectural spaces, and before a building is finished, when it's being built, that's almost when you get the best sort of stereoscopic interest because of all these semi-transparent or screens, I guess, semi-transparency, like these floors with beams going across. And then you can look through the floor at the next floor, which also has beams going across. And you get all these levels and layers.
You said you were on a beam at this point? You weren't on the you were on the
No, I was
ground?
I was on top of the neighboring building neighboring this building that was going
Oh
on.
shit.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I couldn't get a good view from ground level, which would have been
Mhm.
my preference, but I could tell that the best view was going to be had from the roof of this other building. So I was already 4 stories up and on the
Wow,
very
that's
edge of the roof too, trying to get this shot.
Oh, moving on. There we go.
So maybe it's because I like heights or something. There was an artistic event. This was shot 35mm film using a twin rig. And you can tell from the blurry movement of some of the people down there that it's a long exposure. It's probably a 30-second exposure. There was an artistic sort of impromptu art gathering show in this old theater space. And what I'm shooting from is the loft, up where they would have hung the props and curtains and so on in this theater space above the stage. So I'm about 70 feet above the floor. And this I had to set up very, very carefully because, of course, I didn't want to drop anything that would have killed somebody. So I brought my cameras and everything up there way in advance. And then I went down and mingled, and the event started. And then at some point during the event, I wanted to figure out a way, how am I going to get to the roof without anybody noticing me? Because really what you had to do is you had to go on the upper left corner, you had to go behind the screen, but then you'd go up this ladder basically that went up 70 feet. And you were in full view of the floor. But what happened was I was very lucky. At some point, some luminary in Charlottesville arrived, and everybody was like, "Ooh, so-and-so is here," and they all turned toward the entrance, and that's when I made my escape and climbed to the top.
So
And,
you're what are you, like on an ash shaft? Because you seem to be in the middle. It doesn't look like you're.
Yeah, no, I'm so the top of this stage loft is basically flooring. It alternates with flooring and open gaps. And I had my tripod strung across one of these open gaps, shooting straight down.
Got it.
Shooting straight down. And so all I had to do after I had it all set up was go up there and basically trip the shutter. And it was electric. And at the time I was using I was already using some 35mm motor drive cameras. This was shot also like around 2000, I think.
And that whole dark section, like it gets a shadow or something. Like
I think the floor, you mean, in the middle?
yeah. Okay, that's the floor.
It's just lighting. All the lighting was just to light up the artwork around the perimeter of the room. And so the middle of the room looks very dark because of that. Yeah.
Hey, you wouldn't want to drop the House of Bloods from that height.
No, but I was shooting with much lighter cameras at this point. For this,
You hate to be the guy run downstairs, the guy's unconscious, and you're like, how'd the camera do?
I would never be able to have gotten the Hasselblads up there as much as I would have wanted to.
Okay. Got it. Okay, we'll keep moving. Okay. Wow.
Okay, going on, continuing with my interest in architecture and constructed buildings, I was inspired. This picture and a whole series of pictures like this was inspired by a book by Michael Wesley called Open Shutter. I should put that into the chat. At some point, I'll remember to put that in the chat. You guys can look it up. Michael Wesley's book, Open Shutter. He did a whole series of images in New York City where he would set up a camera, heavily filtered and with extremely tiny aperture, maybe even just a pinhole, but heavily filtered. And he would do exposures that ranged from 1 to 2 years in length. Years. So he'd set the camera up at places where buildings were being constructed or torn down, and the shutter would be open all that time while that scene changed. And I thought these were the most remarkable pictures because there was one picture I remember of the Museum of Modern Art in New York was rebuilt or something many years ago, and it was just this ghostly structure over top of that seemed to be hovering over top of and permeating a construction site. And it was the most amazing thing. And in the sky, you could see the trails of the sun. You could see the trails interrupted by stretches of cloudy days and so forth. It was just the coolest thing. So that was my inspiration. And I knew I couldn't do it that way, but I wanted to do it in 3D. And the first thing I did is I asked him, I corresponded with him, and I said, "Did you do this in 3D?" And he said, "No." So give me my green light. And I thought to myself, I can do this digitally. All I got to do is go back to the construction site periodically, set up the cameras in the exact same spot, get an exposure, and then combine them later on. And so that's what I did with this building and numerous other buildings, going back to the site over and over and over again over the span of a year or 2 years or however long it took, and getting the pictures. And then later on, doing the alignments and blending them all together. And of course, as with a lot of my ideas, it seemed so simple and easy at first, but it opened up a huge can of worms and has become a big project. Became a huge project.
So you mark. I guess would you mark the spot? Look at the image that you previously shot and try to how because that's.
I would have to get the lenses and the camera into the exact same spot. I mean, within an accuracy of a millimeter or two, probably. And I did that with a combination of marking the site, so I knew where to put the tripod again, and knowing exactly how I set the tripod up, and then also checking. Like every time I went, I would take a printout of the previous several images I would have gotten, and I would check out and make sure that things were in alignment, like certain landmarks in the distance would line up the same way with things that were in the foreground, and this way I could get the cameras into really exactly the same position. But it was a huge challenge. And the funniest thing is the same thing happened to me that happened to Wesley on a couple of his projects, is things would change in the foreground. Like they would build something else in the foreground of my scene, or they would park a big truck in front of my shooting location, which would remain there for the remainder of the time that I would need.
Now how many times did you, sorry for cutting in, how many times did it take you to realize how, in other words, the margin for error that you had to have built in? In other words, you can't, not the first time you and came back for the second.
This is all I didn't have any knowledge of that. I was doing all these exposures before I went in and did the post-processing. So if it all wasn't going to work out, then it wasn't going to work out. I just proceeded on the theoretical belief that if I get the cameras accurately enough positioned, it was all going to work out. And it did.
That there'll be enough in that shot that you can kind of manipulate it enough to make it work.
Yeah.
But you said a small amount. So you must have been, there had to be a tolerance you were working under, right?
Tolerance? What do you mean?
Yeah, tolerance of like where you put the camera the second.
Yeah, I'm saying I wanted it to be within a millimeter or two.
You said a millimeter,
yeah.
But how did you figure that out the first time through? I mean, you must have gone 2 or 3 times and went, oh shit, I got to go to a millimeter.
No.
Okay.
I just decided right off the get-go, that's what it had to be.
That's what it had to be.
Super accurate. Yeah. I don't know if I actually achieved that or not. The pictures turned out okay.
Oh, but the picture's great. Oh man, no,
and,
great, man.
Yeah. And so I assume that whatever tolerance I finally achieved was good enough. I don't even know if it was a millimeter or not. But yeah, it was.
Whatever it was, it worked. That's the perfect answer. Yeah,
This building right here actually is an example of what I was talking about a moment ago. I shot this from the roof of a neighboring building, and I also shot it from the street down there where you see the cars in the background, in this little parking lot. And what happened is during the construction, and I shot it also off to the right. There was like another little parking lot off to the right. You can't see it in this picture. But what happened is about halfway through the construction of this building, the construction company ended up parking a giant tractor trailer off to the right, blocking that particular viewpoint. So for every building, I made sure to shoot from several different locations because I could never be sure that the location would be any good through the entire span of time that the pictures were being taken.
When you thought that out, that came up. In other words,
there was no way to know. It was always a gamble.
No way to know.
It was always a gamble. And in fact, it could even be that they would block my last shot. You know, they would build something. Who knows? They would build something, and then I wouldn't be able to get a picture of the finished building. And if that happened, the whole thing would have been ruined, despite all the prior pictures, because I wanted to have that picture of the finished building. That was very important.
What are these buildings now? Obviously,
this one right here is was being built 2004 to 2006 or something. It is the fine arts building at UVA for the fine arts department.
Have they seen this?
They have, yes. They didn't put it in a show or anything, but they've seen it.
Yeah. Okay. Schools, you know what I mean? Okay, I'm going to keep.
Yeah,
moving.
Exactly.
Yeah, come on.
It'll be discovered. It'll be rediscovered. You know,
exactly.
in 50 years. Then it'll be hailed as the
That's
amazing
it, man.
achievement
Another
that it
50
is.
years when you're off to glory, the thing will be, they'll have it and it'll go for
So-
$1 million. Oh, well, that's all right.
So the cool thing that I could do that Wesley could not with his long exposures is I could take that same set of images that I took and I could manipulate them differently. I could use a different blending technique in Photoshop. So here in this particular image, I went from left to right. So left is the earliest, just some of the earliest images. And then as you go to the right, you see this blending of later and later and later images until on the far right, you see mostly just the finished structure of the roof.
Sure, because the ladder, that whole stair, the steps were obviously there. And so
what's cool here is you can see how the roof is supported by a certain kind of structure or steelwork. And you can also see the roof lines. And it was
hey, Boris, don't be
it was
lawyer
dumb. It was
someday.
dumb luck that these guys are standing there on the roof, which makes the photo much more
That's
interesting.
great. Boris, there'll be a lawyer someday coming for you for these shots.
Yeah, no
Going.
doubt.
Exactly.
And what's really interesting is if you look in the middle there, there's 4 guys standing there. 2 of them are a little fainter. They're from an earlier exposure. And then the other 2, they're more solid. They're from a later exposure. So it's like
The ghost builders, man.
yeah,
That's great.
it's kinda neat.
That's great.
Okay, so this was a picture. Oh gosh, how to explain this one? This was inspired by a guy whose name escapes me right now. He published this little book called Stereo. Knuchel, Hans Knuchel. Now, you guys are going to have to remember all this stuff, or I'll send this information later. Hans Knuchel has a little book called very, very creative stereoscopic images called Stereo. You can look it up. It's a little bit hard to find. It's been out of print for many years. But he was playing around with all sorts of different ways to create stereo images, one of which was shadows. And I thought, man, I can do that. And so this is the house that was next door to our house back in the early aughts. And I thought, the sun is setting and the sun is moving, and the sun movement would cause the shadows. I bet those shadows would look 3D if I just take a shot and just separate them by, say, 30 seconds or a minute or something. And so that's what I did here. It was a stereo shot, essentially like a sequential shot, although I think I used a stereo rig at the time. But so what I did is I combined the left view with the right view taken at a different time. And the sun had moved along a little bit, so all the shadows of the trees and leaves had changed on the side of this neighbor's house. And so if you look at this, I don't know how many people are going to be able to perceive this, but you look at the more blurry shadows in the lower right, they look like they're quite a ways behind the siding of the house. And then some of the other shadows don't look quite as far behind, and some of them even look like they're in front of the house. That might have been caused by wind movement too, I'm not sure, although it was a calm day. But that was the inspiration. You see the tree there, you see the siding with all the horizontal slatty lines, which, I'm always attracted to that. As I said before, I love these rhythmic elements.
Yeah.
The shutters have the rhythmic elements, and even behind the window, you see the little slats of the Venetian blinds. And then you see the shadows, which are like 3-dimensional. So I don't know, that was kind of the idea.
Look, I love images like this, but you have to look at it for a while and break these things out. That's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, this one's a funny story. So I used to drive a coach bus to New York City on a regular route from Charlottesville to New York. And I did that for a couple of years. And of course, New York City is a very target-rich environment for any 3D photographer, as you all know. And you can probably corroborate this. There's this flea market that I'd heard about that happens underneath the Brooklyn Bridge every Sunday. I don't know, does that still happen? I don't even know. But I had heard about it. And so I went there one day with my Sputnik, and I decided I'm going to get a shot of this flea market under the Brooklyn Bridge. But I had no idea what I was going to shoot. Anyway, I get there, and sure enough, there's a very interesting flea market. And then about 100 miles above me is the Brooklyn Bridge. And there is no way on earth with a Sputnik that you can capture both those things at the same time. Because you would need like a fisheye lens. So I walked around for a bit with the camera. I said, there's no way to do this. And then I put the camera away and I walked around some more and just started looking at what people were selling. And then I came to this guy that was selling large mirrors. And I said, well, that's interesting. I got on the ground and I looked from the ground up at the mirrors, and there was the Brooklyn Bridge. And so then I took my Sputnik and I propped it up using my pocket knife at the right angle. because it was going to be a long exposure. You all know that Sputniks take a lot of time with film and all that. And while I was taking this shot, all the people around me were like, what's this guy doing in the wall? And they probably felt sorry for me because they thought I'd broken my camera or something.
No, they were worried about that knife you pulled out, your pocket knife. It was saying, oh,
Yeah,
okay, here we go.
They couldn't even see that. That's sitting underneath the camera, and I'm fiddling now with my camera for minutes on end because, you know, I'm shooting this Sputnik, which always takes a little extra effort.
Now, how do you,
Anyway,
okay.
That's how this shot came to be. I got down there on the ground and I was shooting from ground level up at the mirrors, trying to capture the
Okay, so I got to
Brooklyn
ask it. So the pocket knife.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you stick it, like kind of lean the camera on the.
Well, I didn't have a tripod. I didn't have a tripod, and I had to figure out a way to hold the camera at the correct angle upwards. You know, not horizontal. It had to be pointing upwards for like a 1 or a 2 second exposure. And that wasn't going to work out handheld. I can tell you that from experience. So I had to prop it up with something. It could have been anything. Could have been a rock or I don't know, anything rigid.
No, again,
and I've always got a Swiss Army knife on me, so I used that. I stuck that down underneath the camera. And
well, you were going to Brooklyn. I figured you were packing a knife. And I said, okay, good.
Yeah, I'm always carrying that. You know,
Oh, okay, you need the knife.
Except for nowadays with airplanes and all, you can't.
Yeah, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
Although the Sputnik would make a great bludgeon at the end of the day.
No, I don't think so. It would basically shatter if you try and hit somebody with it.
Yeah, you're right. Stereo realist, on the other hand, you're going to jail.
You were thinking of the realist. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
All right, moving ahead. We had a guy in Charlottesville, visiting artist. His name is Antonio. No, wait, that can't be right. Anyway, his last name is Zagar. And this guy, Zagar, I think it's Antonio Zagar. I could be wrong, though. Just look up Zagar in Philadelphia, and you'll find him. Zagar is famous in Philadelphia, and he's covered many, many Philadelphia buildings with these murals that are made from bits of glass and bits of tile and mirror and all these little bits of stuff, ceramic stuff. And then he also paints. And Zagar, on very rare occasion, does this elsewhere. And we were blessed with his presence in Charlottesville, where he did a mural for us. I can't remember who arranged it or how it was happening. And I can't even remember how I got wind of it, but I immediately wanted to go there and photograph it because Zagar's stuff is really interesting in stereo. So, for example, if you were to look at this picture flat, you would probably not be able to recognize that the artist here who's painting through the mural, this is not Zagar, by the way, it's one of his assistants, he is reflected in all the little bits of mirror. You can actually kind of make out his three-dimensional shape behind the wall in reflection. You would never be able to see that on a flat photo. So for me, this was both a recording of Zagar's work and of the stereoscopic quality of it. And it also makes a great demonstrator of some of the qualities in an image that you just can't capture with a regular photograph. And they're kind of magical when you capture those things with a 3D camera.
And those are all mirrored pieces? Those are all?
Not all of them. I mean, you can see some of them are black and
yep,
yellow and white. Mm-hmm. But you can see some of them are, like down see that red hand the guy's painting and the arm that's going down. That's where you can see reflected his hat and his white apron and all that. You can see him. He's reflected all the way down.
And what was the shot with?
This was shot in 35 millimeter.
Okay, 35. Yeah. You cropped it like this because it was what? This
is almost the full frame, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is me close up. I'm almost standing just a few feet behind the guy. And I could even have shot a selfie this way, but I don't think I'm in the picture anymore.
So you held the camera. Now, how many? Again, was that the?
This is not posed or anything. I mean, I went there and I shot like 2 or 3 rolls of film.
It's okay.
And this is the shot I like the best.
Okay, but how would that? Okay.
Yeah.
Try to figure out why in that format. Was it 2 cameras on the side? Is that what you did?
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. To get my 2 SLRs close to, even remotely close to eye spacing, I always shot them base to base. So I shot almost everything vertical format back in the day if I was using a twin SLR. And that's what I was doing here. I was using a twin SLR on a custom-made plate that allowed me to mount them base to base. Yes. And and almost by way of contradicting myself, this was also shot with twin SLRs, but they were on a bar side by side. So the riders look a little bit miniaturized, and the depth effect is probably a little bit exaggerated. This was also shot with telephoto lenses. So actually, probably that's where you kind of need the extra stereo base anyway.
And
this-
what was the shot with again?
So this was shot with a twin SLR also.
Twin SLR. Now, did you have them? Did you sync them with your fingers, or they were
No,
wired
no,
together?
no. These are electrical
Electrical
sync.
sync. Got it.
And the aim of this photo, I was also, in the early aughts, I was really into making anaglyphs. I did an anaglyph show, I remember sometime back then. And one of the things I was exploring with anaglyphs was I wanted to create artistic looking anaglyphs where it wasn't obvious that they were anaglyph. And so what I would do is, in this example, for example, this picture, I'm trying to hide that red and blue fringing that is characteristic of anaglyphs. I'm trying to hide that in motion blur. So if an ordinary, regular civilian looks at this picture, they would never know it was an anaglyph, because they would say, oh, look, it's all blurry. There's blurry parts. That's blurry because these guys are racing and the camera's swinging along, and, and they wouldn't know it. And then you hand them the 3D glasses, and then they go, whoa, it was totally unexpected, because
So you worked this in Photoshop, or?
This is just a straight anaglyph. It's two pictures that I put. You could use Photoshop, you could use Stereo Photo Maker, anything. It was just.
Yeah,
I shot this on slide film. And I had a left image and a right image, and I stuck them together in Photoshop.
And you scanned it, and then because that's what you should. In other words, massaging it so that.
Well, there's no real massaging it. I just turned it into an anaglyph.
Oh, but I what you said was that the whole idea was to make it look like it wasn't an anaglyph until people.
Well, yeah, and that's where the motion blur comes in. There's a lot of
motion blur, right?
Because I'm panning the cameras here. These guys are bike racing past me at about 30 miles an hour. I'm panning the camera. The shutter speed was a 15th of a second. You're going to get blur. Yeah. Similar with this picture. Here, I think the prior picture was not a telephoto lens, and this is a telephoto lens. Now here you'll see I did massage the images. This was a very, very colorful image on the slides, and I decided I'm going to kind of make the colors pop and make it all look a little bit more abstract. And the result of it was, in the end, as you see on the pants of the nearest guy, he's got written on there, rich something. There was a red panel there. You see some good retinal rivalry there, but I think that's the only red in the whole image. In the whole thing, I ended up turning kind of yellow and blue, which are two colors that work well in anaglyph. And then, of course, the background is blurred. But again, all this blurring and the fact that it's an action shot kind of doesn't make it look like an anaglyph anymore. If you look at it flat, everybody take your glasses off. Look at it flat. It looks like sort of an artsy-fartsy, action shot of a bike race. All the motion blur is as expected because it's an action shot at a bike race, and you wouldn't really think, especially if you're not familiar with anaglyphs, you wouldn't think this was a 3D picture. But then when you put the 3D glasses on, it was like, cool. It's a cool surprise.
Oh yeah, it's excellent. Excellent.
I mean, that's the idea behind this shot.
Even when you go down by the wheels, all of a sudden everything just pops. It's great.
Yeah. All righty. Moving ahead, this was shot on medium format film. This was in the lab of one of my clients. I told you before that I do scientific illustrations and technical illustrations for people in academia mainly, and mainly they are material scientists. I mean, I'm actually quite specialized. Not on purpose, it just happens that way. Because I get all my business through word of mouth. And I started with material scientists, and they tell all their material scientist friends, hey, this guy makes good drawings. And so that's what I ended up doing most of my life. But I got into I was there visiting to discuss some illustrations with this guy, one of my clients. And I look over into his lab and I see this gigantic machine with all these wires and cables and plexiglass and tubes and whatnot. And I just love this kind of stuff. And it's very complicated looking, and it's very futuristic looking. And I call this one the temporal continuum distortion analyzer, because obviously it's some kind of a time machine. And and I asked him if I could photograph it. And so I did. I came back with my medium format camera and actually some lights too, because I wanted to have control over the lighting. It didn't look anywhere near as exciting as it does here, because in the lab light, it was just kind of double looking.
And the other good thing about it is, you see that little handle in the back?
Yeah,
On the-
does it-
yeah. If you
does it
turn
say-
that, it actually plays when smoke gets in your eyes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I see the handle next to the porthole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, so actually, to be honest, this is the same machine, only a different side of it. This machine is actually not a time machine. I know that none of you believe that anyway. It's a deposit. It's a directed vapor deposition machine, and I thought it was like custom made there, but they told me no, you can go out and buy these. I don't know if you can find them on eBay or Alibaba or what, but he said you just go out and buy these for about $1 million, and you set them up in your lab, and then you can do these experiments where you take your sample and you put it in a vacuum. It's basically a big vacuum chamber. And then there's an electron gun on one side and you can zap your sample and that's the directed vapor deposition something or another. You create these atomic vapors that you can then study how they deposit onto other substrates and so on. Anyway, it's just an experimental device. And I just think it looks cool and, learn to photograph it.
It is that machine art. It's just great.
Yeah.
Cost you $1 million for the machine and $6 million for the guy to put it together.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think this is
And $10 for the guy that photographs it.
yeah. No, a bowl of soup.
Right. A bowl of Campbell's tomato soup.
Thanks, pal. No.
Yeah, just like Andy Warhol.
This is
So yeah. So here I'm into abstraction. I like to do abstract, unfamiliar things. And although you probably can recognize this is not entirely unfamiliar, this is bubbles. I decided I wanted to shoot bubbles. And I call this one, the title of this one is, oh gosh, let's see if I can remember something about, closed cell foam opacity gradient. So this is a bunch of soap bubbles, and soap bubbles make a closed cell foam. That means each bubble is closed. You can't go from one bubble to the next without going through some kind of a surface. So it's a closed cell foam. And it's an opacity gradient because as you go from the top of the bubbles where they're kind of evaporating away towards the bottom of the bubbles where they're close to the liquid, you go from being nearly transparent to being basically opaque. And those of you that are paying attention will note that this picture is upside down. But that's the way I want it to be. It's upside down. And I shot it lit from below so that I could turn it upside down because the mind's eye expects lighting to come from above. I don't know if that's obvious in this picture, actually, but the light is coming from above in the picture. And yet the bubbles are getting fainter and fainter and fainter and thinner and thinner and thinner as you go down. And the liquidy surface is at the top, upside down. So it's just kind of disorienting, but at the same time, kind of cool. I don't know, to me anyway. I don't know if anybody else likes it.
So what was this in? What was this, a fish tank or something?
What you do is you go to the next slide and I'll show you.
Look at me, fish tank. Uh-oh.
So this was,
I said the secret word.
Yeah, you did. And you see, I did actually shoot this with a realist. Although in this picture, the realist, I pulled it back to show the lighting in the fish tank. I should have probably left it close to the glass because the realist was very close to the glass shooting it. And what you're seeing there is you're seeing a fish tank with a little bit of water in it. And then I put a piece of translucent plastic, which I don't know even what that was. Maybe it was like what you get, like a place setting on a table or something. Anyway, it was sort of a diffuser. I used it as a diffuser because I didn't want to shoot just the bubbles. I needed to shoot the bubbles with a limited amount of depth. And so I put this diffuser into the glass. And then that gave me a region that was probably maybe a half an inch of bubbles coming up from that watery surface. And the bubble is just soapy water. So I just blew bubbles into it or something, or somehow I stirred it up and made those bubbles happen. And then I stuck the diffuser down in there, and that gave me the right number of bubbles to photograph. And then I photographed it on film using that stereo realist with it's like a macro realist. And then I scanned all that and made the stereo view that you had just seen.
And on this one, the water looks clear, right? And it's clear. In post, you blew it up. Is that
so the people who are seeing this image on your separate channel on their 3D TVs, they're seeing it more the natural color. But when I made it into an anaglyph, I decided to make it more blue.
And the previous one?
So this is the anaglyph that I made separately. Yeah. But the stereo pair that I sent you, which Doro is probably looking at on her 3D TV, that is a more of a natural color, which is more greenish or grayish.
Got it. Thank you for that explanation.
Sure. Okay, so now we're going to get into one of my more recent interests, which is trying to show people the value of stereoscopic imaging in rendering minerals. And I've given a talk to one of the mineral societies near here, down in Lynchburg, Virginia, and I'm probably going to give some more talks to local mineral societies, because I find minerals fascinating, and I like to photograph them. This is a photo of a mineral that I took at some natural history museum somewhere, probably the one in DC. I can't remember. Whenever I go to a museum, I'm always in the mineral section taking pictures. And this is a perfect example of how, if you look at this flat, okay, you can see that the shapes are cubic, but you probably can't tell that they are necessary. Some of them are translucent or that they're reflective. These are the sorts of things that you can capture with the stereo camera. And even you can see inside some of these cubes, you can see some so-called inclusions inside the crystals. This kind of stuff you just can't capture in a flat photo. And I think it's especially valuable in minerals photography because, first of all, the images are usually very abstract. You don't see minerals lying around on the street. Usually you see them, either in a microscope or it's just not, you don't usually see them. And so if you show a picture of a mineral to somebody like this, they don't know what the heck they're looking at. They don't know what's transparent and translucent.
No, they think the roof collapsed.
Yeah. So 3D photography is really valuable, I think, in the minerals photography. You show that in the next slide too. So here, for example, is a cluster of quartzite crystals. You look at this flat and you can kind of tell, well, that must probably be some shiny stuff. But it's so cluttered and complex looking that you would never, in the flat picture, you would never know what the actual three-dimensional structure is, because that's completely obfuscated by all the other glittery kind of effects. And you put the 3D glasses on and suddenly you see the 3D structure, and suddenly you see inside the crystals. And you see also some of the rivalry that's caused by reflections and sparkle. And this is this is sort of a poster child picture for advancing the value of 3D photography. And I put into the chat, and I think Doro will also pass around the URL for my blog. I do a blog on 3D. And one of my next blog posts, which is going to happen in about a week or so, is going to be about my minerals photography. Okay, so we skipped forward. We're almost running out of time. This is the last image. My nudes work has been getting a little bit introspective, and I'm starting to think, how can I show the backstories of some models, or how can I show the backstories of maybe even the whole notion of glamour photography and beauty photography? And that's what this image is about. Now, upon first glance, and especially if this is an anaglyph, if you take your glasses off, you look at this, and all you see is, my intent is that all you'll see is a bookcase and a pretty model in a bikini or something standing in front of the bookcase. But if you put the 3D glasses on, you start to see something else, which I intend to be the backstory. Now, I don't know if this is actually the real backstory of the model, but she's an appropriate model. She's thin, and if you look carefully, you can see, at least in the story I'm telling, she's thin because she likes to vomit, and she eats a lot and spits it all out again, which is kind of an ugly backstory. So I got a couple of things going on in this image. One is I'm doing a little bit of empathy, where I'm giving you an image that is at first glance attractive, but then if you look very, very, very closely, gives sort of tells an unattractive story. I kind of want to disturb my audience in that way, to surprise them and maybe get them to think about things in a different way. Because I've been thinking, I've been doing this kind of photography for 30 years, or 25 years. And I'm thinking about it in a different way too, as I've gotten older. And that's
you got to give me some backstory here. You left us hanging on that one.
What? That was the whole backstory. What are you talking about?
Okay, I must have fallen asleep. No, okay.
What backstory do you need?
Well,
my inspiration.
Well, actually, this is a lot of front story when you think about it. But
yeah.
Okay, so what is in, like, there's a pane. I'm trying to figure out what that thing is. Do
you see? Okay, you're looking at it in 3D, right, Johnny?
Yeah.
Do you see on the right side of the picture the toilet?
No. So I don't know why I'm not seeing it.
So okay, you're not getting it because you're not seeing it.
That's the answer. Right? Good.
Yeah,
I am
that's the
extremely thick at certain points, but no.
This is a little bit of a magic eye poster. You know how you look at a magic eye poster, all you see is a random pattern, and then you put the 3D glasses on, or you cross view the random eye, or whatever you do. You look at the magic eye poster in 3D, suddenly you see shapes. You see shapes and stuff. And that's what this picture is. You see shapes.
I will look at this more closely.
And
obviously, this needs a little more closer observation than
I'm going to give you. I'll give you and your audience another hint, which is if you look at this, keep in mind that the 3D scene is being illuminated only by a slide projector. The 3D scene, all the light in the scene, all the illumination is this image of the girl in front of the bookcase. That's the light falling onto the scene. Okay. Then you look at the scene itself, and it tells a completely different story from the lighting that's being thrown onto the scene.
I think it helps if you look above the head of the lady on top of the toilet.
Yeah, right. Okay. Doro is pointing it out. Okay.
Why am I missing this?
You don't see on top of her head, you see the lid.
You see there's a
of
curve.
The toilet. Yeah.
There's a curve of the toilet lid on top above. You don't even see the head. So this is a hard direction to give.
Yeah, I know. When he said the head, I said, man, I must be doing something really wrong. I don't know
Because
what I
the
had
head is
last
cut
night,
off.
but it's kicking in now.
And on the far left side, on the left edge of the scene, you see the outlines of a sink. Right on the upper left is this bowl of the sink, and then on the left edge is the pedestal of the sink, and then down by the knees of the projected girl in the underwear, you see the flooring, which is actually makes her knee appear to come forwards.
A great piece. It's like a Rorschach test for me. But I will look later again.
Yeah,
I will look more closely at this, and
you will look at it. You must look at it with a 3D TV if you don't get it as an Anaglyph.
Yeah, I absolutely. Now you piqued my interest. Pardon the pun.
All right, good.
Oh, look at that. We got back to the motorcycle patch.
Yeah,
that was great, man. Holy cow. And now, and we only just got started, and boy, we're not going to have much time for the after party, but I don't think anybody minds.
Oh, what time is it? 4:15. We still got to talk about the Hibbert book.
Yeah, well, we're about to go into that. In other words, you go, folks, you ain't seen nothing yet. So, yes, let's keep moving. Hold on. I'm not going to stop my share. I put myself back on for whatever reason. And now, let's go to these. Now, this is, you know what? You explain it, because I can explain it secondhand, and you can explain it right away. Incidentally, you can purchase this. So we're going to speak about that in a minute.
So this, in fact, my whole invitation here was precipitated by this thing that I was doing on Photo 3D. I'm trying to sell these remainders of a book, or I should say a monograph by Bill Hibbert of the photography of Lartigue. Lartigue's photo is famous. He shot this photo of a woman kind of in midair as she's jumping down a set of stairs. This is, turn of the century photography. He's an early photographer, and he's mainly remembered for that shot because he was one of the few, if not the only photographer in that era who was shooting sort of action shots. This is when cameras were still really big and clunky, and yet he's famous for that photo. But few people know that he has a vast collection of, he shot many stereoscopic photos, and Bill Hibbert wanted to bring that to everyone's attention about 15 or 20 years ago, whenever he published it, his monograph. Because really this photographer was not just a pioneer in flat photography, he was also a pioneer in doing stereoscopic photography.
And that was the gentleman's name was Jacques Henri Lartigue.
Lartigue, Jacques Henri Lartigue. Yeah. So if you want me to, I want to kind of show this booklet.
Hold on a second. Sure.
Do I get to do?
You know what? Let's flip through these quick.
Oh, let's flip through the photos,
and then we go right to the Then we go right to the booklet.
So here's some pictures. The first picture that was shown was sort of a landscapey water picture, which I like because it's just it's pretty. But he also, the neat thing about Lartigue was, now he lived in the upper crust of English society, and he knew many people who were famous in their day. Like the immediately preceding image showed a famous aviation pioneer who would fly his dirigible over Paris all over the place. And this one shows a diver, in midair. This is the kind of action shot that Lartigue would shoot. That was very unusual for its day.
Yeah, you imagine how many it had to take to get this. In 1916, it wasn't like you had high-speed cameras, right?
Yeah, no, there were. Well, I mean, he did have high speed, but he shot it wide open, I suppose.
Relatively high speed, right?
Catch that. Let's see here. Let's see what the next one
And
is.
two of them, right? Obviously, he had.
This is horizontal diver.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a great shot right here. So this is a picture where this woman is wearing this enormous headdress that looks like flames in a flat photo, but in a 3D photo, you can immediately identify it as being something different, something more like the plumage of a wide bird or wings of a bird or something like that. And so Lartigue didn't just do 3D snapshots, randomly. I think he really understood stereoscopy very well, and he understood what it was good for and what was good for capturing. This is just another example of that. So I'm showing pictures here. So this is a great shot here of the smokers in the ski chalet. Just to underline that point I just made, I think he really understood that with 3D, these kind of subjects are extremely fascinating, and he would capture them using a 3D camera. These are guys.
This makes me want to smoke.
Yeah, these are après. These guys are skiing somewhere, and after the skiing, they sit down and they have a smoke.
Makes me want to light one up.
Wonder what the next picture is.
This is.
Oh, and this is probably my favorite. Now I want to read this. So just to give you an idea of what you'll get, and we're talking about something I'm selling. Okay, this monograph, and that's why we're going to get into what you're actually getting. You're getting these images, but there's more than just the images. Each image comes on a card that has both an entry from Lartigue's.
I'm going to let you. I'm going to stop sharing. I want you to listen.
Yeah, this is the last image. So
yeah.
Let me show you this card.
So you can.
Do I need to share my screen? Do I need to do anything?
No, you're good. If you hold it right up, you're in good shape.
All right. You could make me full screen then.
Yeah, that's good.
Anyway, that's that same image. You get this on a card. There's 100 cards like this in the monograph. 100 cards are about 6 inches square. The stereoscopic separation here is 2.5 inches, so it's perfect for free viewing. But in fact, the print quality is so good. If you look at this under magnification in a stereoscope, you will not see any dots. They're really amazingly well done. And I just wanted to show you that each card has an entry from Lartigue's daybook. He was a prolific note taker with his photography. And so you get a bit of material that Bill Hibbert found about each photo that Lartigue wrote. And then you get another set of notes from Bill Hibbert himself, making remarks about the history or the provenance of the image or whatever is relevant. And in this particular image, one of the charms of it is that it shows reflections, important reflections. You can tell that on one side, I think it's on this side, you can see a profile view of his wife and child in a mirror just off to the side. And then, not obvious at all, but if you read the notes, you can look on this side. There's actually a little selfie of Lartigue. There's another mirror over there in the background. You can see him taking his picture. So I haven't even gotten through all these cards. I've had this set for 15 years, and I haven't even gotten through them all yet in terms of reading it all. I looked at them all, but there's so much information here. It's fantastic. So I just wanted. I was saying my whole visit here came about because I was selling the remainders. I had a correspondence with Bill Hibbert over the last few weeks. I got to talking to him about something. It had to do with I had wanted to do a Patreon post on my blog about his monograph, which includes this booklet, by the way. See, I'm totally disorganized now. There's this booklet, 32 pages, describing the motivation of Bill Hibbert in doing the monograph, describing Lartigue's motivations in making the photographs, describing the society that he lived in, and the photographic technology that he had available to him. Also, this booklet includes a lot of notes on how stereoscopy works, how the stereo window works. It's actually a great little booklet on 3D in general. But anyway, I wanted to say the whole reason I'm here today is because Johnny wanted to buy one of these remainder sets, the 100 cards, and the booklet, which I was putting up for sale on Photo 3D. I'd been talking with Bill Hibbert about his monograph because I had recently rediscovered it in my studio and I fell in love with it. And I had wanted to do a Patreon post about it. And in conversation, it turned out he said to me, he has only a few left, but he has all these remainders left. And the remainders don't include the stereoscope that came with the full set. And he said he was going to throw them away. Going to throw away all these remainders. About 2 or 3 dozen of them. And I said, oh, don't do that. This is such a fantastic set of images. Don't throw them away. I can find buyers for them. And so he said, okay, I'll give them to you. I'll send them to you. And then you sell them. And so that's the arrangement we've agreed upon. And I actually have the first set of 12 coming to me as we speak. It's already in the mail. And I have 5 buyers so far, 5 or 6 that have paid. So we'll have a couple of sets left over. And there'll be notes in the chat, I think, about how to contact me about this. But what I'm doing is I'm offering this set. Now, the original monograph cost $80, would cost you $80 if ordered from England. And there's a few of those left. You can do that if you want. But it includes a stereoscope, which is kind of cool. My set does not include the stereoscope. It includes just the printed materials for $40. And if you act quick, Bill Hibbert also made a lorgnette that is mailable, which I happen to have some of. I think I have 7 of them left in my studio. I got them years ago when I got that original set. And so if you want one of these, $10 more, for $50, you can get the monograph remainder, which is the booklet and the 100 cards for $50, and the lorgnette, the Bill Hibbert lorgnette. But I only have 7 of these. So you'd have to act quick.
Wow. So that's a hell of a bargain, considering you'll be buy it now, so you don't end up buying it on eBay for $400 in 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I would suggest, because a thing like that,
No, you don't. Yeah, but I wouldn't buy this for investment purposes. I would buy this for the pure pleasure of it.
Exactly.
The photographs are so fantastic. The photographs are amazing, and the reproduction quality of the photographs is amazing, because under magnification, they don't even look like they don't even look like offset printing. They look like photographs.
So you don't see the halftone marks or anything.
There are no halftone marks. I don't even know what process he uses, but it's amazingly good. And the other fun thing is, there's another fun. You know that Bill Hibbert is a true artist, even though he didn't take the pictures. He's a true artist because each card is numbered, and each card is numbered as a stereo pair, and they're all different. They're all a little artistically different twist on the numbering. And when you look at them in stereo, they have sort of depth effects coming on. So it's kind of fun. It's a fun set.
The whole thing is great.
Yeah, it's fun.
The photographer himself, Jacques, shall we call him?
Yeah. Lartigue. I just call him Lartigue.
Yeah. Jacques, that's all I know. But
and
he has the passion. He has the passion.
Yeah, and this set was actually given to me as a gift.
And this
back in the day,
group of passionate people. Him, Bill, Boris. It's just a chain of passion for this is worth it just by that alone. Yeah. And Christmas is coming. You're going to need something for yourself. That's what I would say. Yeah. Buy yourself a gift at $40. Look, I'm in. I'll tell you right now. I knew it right away.
Somewhere in the notes there will be. I think Stereo Doro is going to put in my email address and the address for the URL for my blog. Oh yeah, it says right here. It's got the information here. So. Look into your chat notes.
Yep, look at the chat, and
Doro has put in a bunch of information about